Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest Dzone webinar. My name is Dzone Kafka, and I am the Community Engagement Manager here at Dzone. And we're excited you're here. We've got a great topic today, and so we're really happy that you're with us. If you're new to Dzone, we are one of the world's largest online communities of software developers and experts. We publish all sorts of knowledge resources for developers and really anyone passionate about software development. We've got all kinds of stuff from ref cards to trend reports and thousands of articles published by our community, making us the go-to knowledge hub for developers all over the world. We do a ton of great events as well, like this one and several others coming up. And you can find them all at dzone.com/events. There you can see past events, on-demand webinars, upcoming events, and all kinds of other great stuff. Joining me today is Akmal Chaudhry. He's a senior technical evangelist at SingleStore, and Matt Brown, the head of commercial marketing at SingleStore. Akmal has over 25 years of experience in IT, and he's held roles as a developer, a consultant, product strategist, evangelist, technical writer, technical trainer, and so many others with several blue chip companies and big data startups. He's regularly presented at many international conferences, and he's served on the program committees for several major conferences and workshops, and has published and edited or co-edited 10 books. He's got a Bachelor's of Science in Computing and Information Systems, a Master's of Science in Business Systems Analysis and Design, and a PhD in Computer Science. Clearly, he's the expert today. And then Matt is with us as well. He's the head of commercial marketing for SingleStore. Matt organizes SingleStore's Cloud Dev Days, technical workshops, speaker events, and all kinds of other stuff. You can find him on LinkedIn to receive product release news, code tutorials, and other useful developer content. Matt will also be facilitating our Q&A at the last 15 minutes of the presentation, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But before that, Akmal is going to spend a few minutes talking all about how Kafka helps to streamline your customer data streams and create an omni-channel customer behavior dashboard. We all know how vital accurate data is to increasing customer engagement and conversion. And so today, Akmal is going to walk us through how to build a real-time analytics dashboard, how we can predict customer behavior using multiple data sources like digital clicks, app activity, in-store behavior, and others, and how to use SingleStore DB on AWS with the Confluent Kafka connector. Dzone is all about community, so we encourage you to get involved and get engaged in the conversation. On the right side of your screen, there's a little box where you can chat with other attendees and share your own experiences with aggregating customer data or some of the challenges maybe you've had with that. And then also where you can submit questions to Akmal and Matt. And like I said, they'll do their best to answer as many of them as they can. But that's it for me. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Akmal. Akmal, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you very much, Jason. Hope everybody can see me, can hear me. Let's have a look. Just bear with me one moment. There we go. I think that's what we needed. All right then. So thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Jason, and thank you all very much for attending. We appreciate it. We know your time is valuable, and wherever you are dialing in from or connecting, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I'm based in London, and it is, let's have a look, just 4 minutes past 6 in the evening for me. So after this event, I shall be going for dinner. And my colleague, Matt Brown, he will keep me straight. So if I talk on for too long, Matt will interject again, remind me that we do have to finish. So I could keep going for hours, but we don't, unfortunately, have the luxury of that. I haven't got too many slides. I've got a few that I'd like to show you. And then there's a fair bit of code that we can get through. And if you have agreed to receive some communication from SingleStore, Matt will be sending out the links to all the resources and all the GitHub repos and everything that if you want to reproduce what I've done. Alternatively, if you haven't agreed, then I'll provide a contact email for you. Okay, just drop us an email and we can send you the information. Okay, so a little bit about myself then. So Jason kind of covered it really well then. Pardon me. Broad industry experience. So done a lot of things over the years, worked in a variety of different roles. I've been an academic as well, various technologies, but principally database systems. That's my background for a very long time. I've done consulting work as well, publications and presentations. And there we have at the bottom the contact email if you need to reach us. Okay, so team at singlestore.com. Okay, so just use that one, mention this particular event. Okay, and so if we don't have time to follow up with the questions today, if there's things, reach out to us on that, and we'll try and get back to you and help you out there. Okay, there we go. Publications. So I've been very fortunate over the years, and I've worked for the variety of different publication houses and had the good fortune to get some books out. I don't do these anymore, unfortunately, because it takes too long. The typical sort of cycle for this is like 2 years, and today, as you know, that kind of time scale is just unrealistic. The world kind of changes in 6 months is too long, 3 months is too long. Please don't buy any of these, okay? They are obsolete, but this gives you kind of an example of some of the technology from the past, okay? So years ago, it was kind of object-oriented databases, and then we had XML databases as well. And today, of course, the hot technology of the day is NoSQL. However, one observation that I've made, over the last sort of 20, 25 years is that SQL, despite all of the predictions of its demise and the fact that these large vendors will disappear because some new technology, database technology, would replace them, it's never happened. It didn't happen with OODBs. It didn't happen with XML. It has not happened so far with NoSQL, where it actually accounts for like about 2% of global database sales. I mean, it's tiny. SQL, though, has grown and matured, and we see the growth and development of these distributed SQL database systems, of which SingleStore is a great example. And today we're going to look at some of its features and capabilities. So in terms of my goals for this particular event, give you a little bit of an introduction to SingleStore. Basically, I hope that I'll be able to convey to you how easy it is to use, simply from the graphical user interface that I'll be using. Alternatively, I mean, you can do from the CLI as well, and SingleStore is MySQL wire compatible, which means all the wonderful tools out there that you use perhaps with MySQL or MariaDB, you can use these as well with SingleStore. And in fact, I'll show you a little example later on where we're going to use Metabase, and that doesn't support SingleStore per se, but I can connect to it because of the MySQL wire compatibility. There's 3 kind of principal demos that I wanted to show you. Simple sensor temperature example, okay, just to get things kind of started, and introduce a couple of concepts as well, which I think will be important. So in MarTech, for example, the ability to deal with geospatial data could be very important, okay? And the example that we'll look at the end, you'll see a complete kind of visualization. Similarly, AdTech, take that and show you something and give you a little bit of a sort of a clue in terms of ingesting data, using pipelines, and also show you that where we might have some data that are wrong. There is a facility that SingleStore provides that kind of makes a best guess effort and tries to fix things for you, okay, which could be useful. Now, I appreciate that with Kafka, you can use things like a schema, a registry, and so on, but in our examples today, we're not going to do that, right? And that may not, you may or may not do that in the real world. It just depends. I think it's a question of the application and your requirements and so on, how stringent you want to be. But equally, there's no guarantee that data may be generated correctly in the real world, and that's an example that we'll look at today as well. I'll try to keep everything as cloud-based as possible. Of course, there's always a risk there. The internet goes down, something goes wrong. That's outside my control, act of God. But we'll do our best, okay? And so hopefully we won't have any problems there. Certainly on SingleStore, you won't see any problems, and we'll get to that shortly. Okay, so SingleStore then, what is it? A real-time distributed SQL database, modern applications and real-time analytics. You may have heard of it previously as MemSQL, okay? So an in-memory kind of row store. Over the past couple of years, huge developments and improvements. So the ability to have a kind of unified architecture can do analytics, column store, as well as row store, and really multi-model integrates with a variety of technologies, the MySQL wire compatibility. There's a whole bunch of things that really make it stand out from the crowd. There is a world of databases, hundreds of them out there, but SingleStore, I think, is the one that features and support today, I think, is unmatched. And I've worked in database technology for a very long time, and I'm very pleased to be working for such a company and working with such a product. Okay, so 30,000 foot view, here we go. So essentially at its core then, we have, let me try and get an arrow here. Okay, so an in-memory row store, a disk-based column store. Today we're going to look at a little bit of this in terms of building a couple of dashboards. Okay, one is kind of pre-built, another one I actually went through, that's the Metabase that I mentioned a little bit earlier on. And we are going to be doing a bit of streaming data here. Okay, so again, here on the left-hand side, and we are going to focus on the cloud-based database as a service. Okay, and you can, of course, use it other ways, on-prem, self-hosted cloud, containers, and so on. Let me just clear this. The other thing is that obviously it is a relational database system. Okay, so we're doing quite a bit of SQL there. But the other thing is that it supports a number of other capabilities. So we are going to do a bit of geospatial as well. Okay, you'll see how we handle that. Very useful. And if you're interested, it means things like time series support, full text search, okay, and quite extensive JSON support as well. Considerable improvements in the recent announcement, the winter release, and even key value is possible. So as you can see, a very wide range of capabilities and features. And what this means is that from a developer's perspective, there is no need to go and learn like half a dozen different technologies. I mean, the choice is great from one perspective, but the thing is the time and effort you need to spend as a developer learning all these technologies can be quite daunting and quite consuming. And it's hard, the world changes very quickly. And so having something like this that has a wide range of capabilities means that you can learn a single product and it will give you all these features and functions. Here are some of the things that make SingleStore fairly unique. I won't cover all of these, okay, in the interest of time, but what I will draw your attention to is the fast ingestion that we plan to look at today. Okay, so I'll show you a feature called pipelines, which is very, very useful. Literally in few lines of code, it's easy to connect to a data source. Kafka is an example that we'll use today, and for two of the examples, and you could actually use it with something like S3 as well. Okay, so it's a great way to ingest large quantities of data in parallel, and that will give you a great way to process that data as well very fast. Okay, and the fact that it's distributed means that you can utilize the distributed features of the system. The other thing that I think, as I stressed a little bit earlier on, is the MySQL wire compatibility, and that's down here. Let me draw a box around that. I think the arrow is going to be a little bit difficult. So this is really, really useful in the sense that if you have worked with MySQL, MariaDB already, your skills are directly transferable across to SingleStore DB, drivers, all sorts of tools, and if you've worked with them, it's very largely compatible with the vast majority of them. Okay, there are some small differences here and there, and there are some important differences as well between SingleStore and MySQL, MariaDB. Those are documented on our website. But for the large part, I mean, what this means is that it gives you a great kind of leg up. You get that jump start and the ability to, really go beyond those existing database systems is something that's far more scalable and can handle much larger workloads. Okay. In terms of traditional sort of data architectures, we have seen this type of scenario. So you may have worked with the sort of Lambda architecture here. We've got kind of real time and batch and some kind of data lake here. We might have ETL, okay, change data capture, and working with a variety of different systems, whether it's data warehouses or system of record. And incidentally, SingleStore can also be used as a system of record now. That's what one of the features and advantages that you get with that. We see a lot of interaction today as well. I mean, many of you, I'm sure, have a presence on social media. Okay, IoT, Internet of Things, small devices, think about Apple AirTags, those kind of things, temperature readings, sensor readings, wearables, and your handphones have become far more than handphones. I mean, these intelligent devices can do a lot more for you, and literally your whole life can be on a phone. Quite worrying in some respects, because if you lose it, I mean, what do you do? I mean, we kind of feel a little bit helpless, but the thing is, the technology is great. I mean, it can do an awful lot for us. I think we've seen a gradual shift, though, to something like this, okay? This idea of an integration hub. And Kafka is a great example of this. And for those of you who have long memories, or you're kind of old, like I am maybe, perhaps you recall in distant days, CORBA, Common Object Request Broker Architecture. And this very much reminds me of that, like a kind of a service bus, okay? That we have the ability to connect these systems to this and be able to utilize them. So where Kafka is awesome for streaming and being able to manage these kind of streams of data for us, perhaps you need to do some additional work on top of that. So the analytics, for example. And what I would say is that this is not just something on paper. There is a customer that I happened to have a chat with just recently. We were discussing some of their architectural decisions. They've actually built this type of environment, a hub consisting of actually of 3 different hubs, of which Kafka forms a part, and single store is a major component as well. So this actually really works, including all the other things as well, such as microservices, for example. And I think especially in environments where it's a very competitive world, organizations need to be able to offer new products and services much faster and be able to get in much faster, because it's almost like a dog-eat-dog world. Okay, you've got to be able to offer new products and services to attract customers, to retain customers. The world changes so quickly, as I said before. I mean, it's rather frightening in some ways, but that's the nature of technology that we live in. Okay, so without further ado, let me start to dig into some of the demos. Okay, so I think I'm not doing too badly there. It's about 6:20 or so my time, and let's switch to the other window here. There we go. And so I'll try and do my best here. So what I've got is, if you go to portal.singlestore.com, but there are a couple of other URLs which I'll share with you later, that signing up for an account takes less than 5 minutes, okay, a couple of minutes at most. Basically, you just provide your email address, create a password. You don't even need to provide a credit card for this. So there is an offer, okay, so $500 worth of credits, and then I think we have a special today as well, in the sense that if you want to load your own data, need some assistance, we have some people that can help with that. Okay, a little bit about that later on. So the first example then, what I have is, let me show you a folium map that I created a little bit earlier on. Okay, so it's quite pretty. This represents, and I could make it smaller, but these things then become a bit crowded, as you can see. So what essentially I have is 1,000 sensors that I've created at random, distributed around the world. So each one of these has the latitude and longitude, has a name, and it's generating some temperature data. And so this is just done at random. So you can see overall, it's not a bad distribution, okay? We've got some of them in the sea, some on land. There are a few kind of spots there where we seem to be missing some. So here, for example, in the Sahara and Algeria, Libya, there we go. It seems to be a fairly big gap. There's a fairly big gap here in the South Atlantic, and a few other places like that. But overall, it's a fairly even and balanced distribution. So previously, what I've done is I've loaded the details of these sensors into Single Store already. Okay, so I've created the database. I've loaded the data, and I've got one table that is going to store the details of the sensors themselves. Okay, so that's the latitude and the longitude, and another one that's going to take the temperature readings. So the sensors table is already got data in it. The 1,000 sensors have already been loaded. The temperatures table currently is empty, nothing there. Okay, and we're going to generate some data. It's going to go through Confluence Kafka cloud, and then we're going to take that data and then connect to it from single store using a pipeline and ingest it directly into the temperatures table. And as I said before, I mean, literally it's like 10 lines of code, and that will get the data in and then do so at scale. There is an important point in terms of the mapping between the single store environment and the Confluent Cloud or the Kafka environment to get the maximum throughput. Okay, I've got a slide a little bit later on that covers that. We'll do that momentarily. All right then. So the other thing that I've also done is I've loaded in some data about the main continents: Antarctica, Australia, Asia, Oceania, Europe, Africa, North America, and South America. So these are kind of polygons. Now the thing is that the more points of data that we have, the more accurate we can get. So if I just go back to my map here for a moment, and let me just scroll over here to South America, you can see that roughly the shape of South America, I mean, we could do it like this, okay? I mean, it looks roughly this kind of shape, right? Approximate purposes for, you know, there we go. All right, if I can draw. So in essence, if we have, say, a couple of points to represent here, for example, here, let's say here, and maybe right down at the bottom here, that would be enough in terms of drawing this polygon, and that gives us a reasonable kind of representation of South America. Obviously, the more points, as I said before, that we have, the greater the accuracy would be. But for our purposes, that's fine. Okay, and we don't need to go that far. That's okay. Okay, so we've got some, and the reason for this is again to enable us to do some geospatial queries. Okay, that could be very, very useful. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's just take a look in terms of the sensors themselves. Okay, and I'll run the query. Just have a look, see if I can get, I'm not sure if that works, if that's magnified it or not. Probably not, but there we go. All right, so let's execute this. And let me take a look down below here. Okay, so just to give you an example, we've got an ID associated with a sensor. It has a name. It's got latitude coordinate, longitude coordinate, and there is this point, geospatial point that's been created. And that is something that was done at ingest time. So as the data were being loaded into this table, automatically this point, geographical point type, was created for us, and single store can handle that. So I didn't need to put that information in, but I've got a rule at the table creation up here, which allows me to do this. Okay, and I'll try and highlight that for you here. There we go, this line here. So it's a persisted computed column, okay, very, very useful feature. And again, for geospatial, this could be very handy. And again, when you're thinking about AdTech, MarTech, for example, you want to be able to calculate locations or be able to store this kind of geospatial data. This could be very useful and very important. All right then. Okay, so at the moment, we've got the sensor data. We've got 1,000 sensors worth of information stored. So we've got a bit of information about where they are, their location globally, and they are generating some data very shortly. Currently, if I execute the queries on the other table, the temperatures table, it's empty. As you can see, the count here is 0. There we go. Nothing in there at the moment. All right then, so I'll switch across here to my virtual environment. So I did promise you that we would try to keep everything as cloud-based as possible, but I do need a little bit of local code here to act as a kind of a producer. So got a little bit of Java code here, which is going to represent and generate, for these sensors, some kind of temperature reading. And it's going to connect to the Kafka cloud. Okay? So I've got a topic, temp, as it's called, and it's going to put that data in. Now, currently here, I'm only going to create 10. So if I run this, okay, there we go. Give that a moment or two. So there we are, it's finished, pretty fast. So it's just created 10 readings so far. And if I take a look back here and we have a look and rerun this query to just again take a look at the temperatures table. Okay, currently nothing there. Okay, we need to create the pipeline. Okay, and we need some way to be able to get the data from the Confluent Cloud to the a single store environment. So here is that pipeline statement. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing is within these few lines of code, I simply need to provide details of the broker. I realize you can see the username and the password. That's okay. Okay, let me just do that. Get my arrow here. Okay, here, credentials, here, and here. Okay. And I've given it a little bit of instruction here. So if it comes across a kind of a duplicate key, ignore it, and then just put this data into the temperatures table. Okay, so let me create this pipeline. Okay, that's done. I can ensure that it always reads from the earliest by simply this statement here. Just set offset to the earliest. Okay, so it starts at the beginning. Let's run that, and we can test it. Just see if this thing is actually working correctly, whether it can connect, and there we go. So it's been able to pull one of these back. Okay, so sensor ID 656, temperature reading is 93 Fahrenheit, and there it's given us a timestamp. Okay, so this is a timestamp from, as in Unix, I think that's from like 1970 in seconds or something like that. That's fine. And if we take a look at how many we have, okay, count star from temperatures. Remember, we created 10 of these, and so hopefully these should have all been ingested. And they're, oh, sorry, count star from, oh, sorry, pardon me. Right, so I've just tested the pipeline so far. I forgot to actually start it. Forgive me. There we go. That's what I need to do. Once I've done that, okay, so the test was literally that. It was just to make sure that the connection was working. Now I actually start the pipeline, and once that's done, I can rerun this, and there we go. That's correct. So we've got 10 back. Here we are. Okay. All right, that's fine. Now, so what I'll do is instead of 10, let me just keep running this until I do a control C. Literally, it will just keep going. There we go. So this, there we go. Okay, so the producer is just generating these readings for these 1,000 sensors, sending them up to the Confluent Cloud. And then on the single source side, very simply, that pipeline is still running. I haven't shut it down. Okay, and I can now run this thing again. How many of these have we got? Well, we're up to 207 now. There we go. And this will keep going until I kill the code on the other side. Okay, there we go, 277. Okay, so I'll just leave that running. And I can show the pipelines here as well, okay? There we go. So currently it tells me this pipeline is running. State is running. Okay, I could have scheduled it, but I didn't. Okay, in this case, it's just done. I started it myself. There we go. Now, from here, then, of course, we can start to do useful stuff because now our data is being ingested in real time. And so we can start running some SQL code, for example. So I might be interested, for example, in a range of readings, you know, show me the sensor and how many of them are there where, for example, the readings range between 70 and 100 degrees. And then execute this. And again, we get back the results down here. So currently we can see here, for example, sensor ID 8, count is 1. At the moment, everything is count of 1. It'll take a little bit of time for those numbers to kind of get bumped up. That's fine. And then we can do other things as well. So find me the maximum temperature reading, show me the sensor, and then I've got some qualification, particular latitude and longitude, group by sensor ID. So in a sense, this kind of query would be something like this, for example. If we go back to our map, so it would be like, say, picking a point, say, over here, and then picking another point over here, and then saying, all right, this kind of box shows you the top left and the bottom right. Show me all the sensors that are contained within that region, and then show me the current values as per the query. Okay, so that is again something that could be very, very useful. The last thing here, as far as this example is concerned, is in terms of the continent. So remember, we've got some continental data, and this might be very useful to say, all right, which sensors lie in particular continents? Let's find a list of those, and that would exclude everything that's in the oceans, for example. That's the sort of query that we could do here. I could run this, for example, and here it's given me a grouping. So it's listed alphabetically by continent here, for example, Africa, sensor name 118, for example, and another one here, 135. And if I were to go back to my map, for example, I suppose I could search some of these, but here I've got 64, for example, 141, and so on. These are in no particular order, but if I was really diligent, I suppose I could go back and click on each of those and check which ones actually were there. But that's fine. I mean, this query actually takes care of that. So key points there. You can see connecting to Kafka, super simple. On the Confluence side, there are some credentials. Okay, so the details of the broker, username and password. I've been able to put them into my pipeline on the single store side. The producer is still running, and as long as that's running, the pipeline on this side will keep running. Even if the data stops, the pipeline will still keep running, okay? Because you might have situations where, for example, data is a bit, it's not continuous. You might get an hour's worth of data, perhaps you need to wait 10, 15 minutes for some more, but it's useful to have the pipeline running in the meantime. The other thing is I didn't throttle the pipeline either, okay? That's something that you can do too in terms of controlling how much data you're ingesting. So very straightforward, few lines of SQL code, and as you can see, I mean, this integrates really, really well, super simple. All right, next example. Okay, so remember, ad tech. So ad tech, we've got some advertising data. We've got campaigns, we have events. This database has already been created a little bit earlier. The table has been created as well. And with this, what I've done is there is an error that's been introduced, okay? So all of these columns for this particular table, with one exception, okay, they are all varchar. The user ID is int as well, but exclude that. The actual data in terms of the campaign, for example, is an int. All right, now, what I've got is I've got some data being generated by a broker. Okay, so we can actually kill this one off. Okay, we can just stop this. Okay, there we go. And let's have a look. Okay, so I'm just going to use KafkaCat to have a look at this particular broker that's running. Just show me what it can see in terms of the data there. So certainly the data being generated, no problem. Let me just do that. So what we have is essentially tab delimited data, and it consists of a number of fields. With the exception of the ID, everything else is a varchar, and also we have the campaign ID, which is supposed to be an int, but actually there's an error, okay? So what it is it actually consists of two numerics separated by a space, okay? And let me just show you an example of that here. For example, this. There's another one.
By the way, Akmal, just wanted to give you the heads up that we are 35 minutes past the hour, just so you have a time.
Thank you very much, Matt. Great job. Thank you. There we go. Okay. So there's a problem there. Now, let's take a look. Okay, so what we'll do is I put the details of the campaigns, all the other stuff in there, but now here is the pipeline in terms of ingesting that data. Okay, so I'll try and create this pipeline. Okay. Sensor readings events doesn't exist. All right, there we go. So let's just make sure we created these tables. Okay, so just do this. There we are. Okay, forgot to create the table. Let me create the reference table for the campaigns as well. Just do that, and let's get some data into the campaigns table. Okay, so we've got 14 different campaigns. Let's create the pipeline. It should be happy now, okay, because it relies upon the table being created before it does anything. The other thing is that we are actually throttling the data here as well. So we're limiting this interval to 2500 milliseconds in terms of what we're ingesting, okay? So as far as the pipeline is concerned, no problem there. I mean, essentially, I'm just telling it, okay, here's the broker, this is the topic. Give it a bit of information in terms of the structure of the data. And if I run this, that's fine, okay? It's happy to create it because it's connected and verified that that's fine. Now, if I try and test this, there we go. Perhaps I should have, there we are. Now, there's an error, okay? So it's come back with an error. And what's the error? It says here, out of range value for column campaign. So the problem is that because we've got an invalid field, essentially, it's trying to follow the structure of what this actual table looks like, and it's kind of hit a problem. One easy solution that we can do is that, let me just drop the pipeline, okay? And we can add a keyword here, ignore. So essentially, it tries to make a best guess effort in terms of what it is you're trying to read in, okay? So we do this. Okay, and again, we'll set this to read from the earliest event. And let's test the pipeline again. There we go. Okay, so notice that in this case, for this particular broker, no credentials required. Okay, we didn't need to provide any password. Oh, there we are. And it seems to be happier this time. Okay, so in terms of the data then, so the column that was causing the difficulty for us was this one, the campaign one. And it's rightly picked up the value 3 here. Okay, so it's taken, I mean, you've got two numerics separated by space. It's taken the first value. It's made a best guess effort to what it thinks it should be, and that's not bad. I mean, it's kind of fixed the problem for us. Realistically, of course, we probably want to go back and have a look and see where the corruption, if you like, occurred. But for now, that solves the issue for us. Okay, and again, we'll start the pipeline. That's done. It's great. Okay, show the pipeline, and it's running. It's fine. The other one is running still as well. Data are being ingested. And what we can do then from this side is we can use Metabase. Okay, so if I just show a refresh rate here. So this is open source, free kind of dashboard building software. I'm not particularly good at this, but as I said before, this is MySQL wire compatible. I didn't need to, I mean, single store, there is no native support for it here, but the fact that it's got MySQL support meant that I could configure this to connect to single store. So this is actually connected to that cluster that I created. And I've created a couple of tiles here just to find a little bit of information and represented it in a slightly sort of better way, in a sort of visual way, if you like, to determine things like the total number of events, the events by region, the events by top 5 advertisers, and by gender and income. Okay, so it is almost, let's see, almost at the top there. So we should hopefully see a refresh there. Let's take a look. Okay, let's try this. Okay. All right, let's take a look. All right, still not picking up this. Let me just have a look. See what's the issue. Databases. So MarTech. Okay, there we go. All of the details there seem to be correct. I think there might be a slight problem in terms of, let's have a look, MarTech. Events by region. Right, so I think, my apologies. So I think what's happened is that because I created this previously, it is very particular about the actual database. So it hasn't picked up on the fact that the cluster has changed. So I'm sorry about that. My apologies for that. So that's something I'll ensure we fix for next time. That's okay. We can still browse the data, for example. Okay, campaigns. Here we go. You can see the tables here. And we can also have a look at the events table. Okay, at the moment, I think, let me just try and summarize. It's no results. I'm sorry about that. So no worries. These things happen. All right. Okay, let's just check this thing's running. Okay, never mind. Okay, just show the pipeline still. Yeah, that's still running. Yeah, I think it's just particular about the configuration. So I'm sorry about that. All right, last thing then, let's have a look to take a look at the one example. So for the MarTech, very straightforward. Okay, so this is actually built in to this particular environment. As you sign up and create your workspaces, it will actually create the database for you. And literally you just walk through the steps in terms of, looking at the tables. There's quite a large number of them. Okay, we've got many tables here: cities, purchases, requests, segments, subscriber segments. We'll see a little bit of visualization for this momentarily. Okay, there are some active queries at the moment. Let's take a look. We can actually just run this. Okay, at the moment, paste into editor. Okay, there we go. Execute this. This provides kind of notifications. And we could actually have a look at the pipelines as well. There's a number of pipelines. So in this particular example, what's happening is the data are being ingested using pipelines from an S3 bucket. So that's in Parquet and JSON format. And these are running. And we go back here. Okay, let's take a look. We can run some queries here. So we can do things like sending notifications to customers, for example. The last query that we had a look at here, it's actually got some geospatial element to it as well. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's paste into editor. Again, it's quite a hefty query. And again, if we take a look here, you can see that there's an element of spatial data here. Polygon, okay, this particular customer name here, total number of notifications they received, and no conversions so far here, as you can see. So it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for this to actually run and complete. Okay, so there we go. So here is the visualization. So there you can see Manhattan, New York, and what you'll see is the data generation. If you look carefully at the visualization, you'll see from time to time some data being updated here. So this is something that is available on GitHub. The data generation, all of the code, the ingest and the analytics, everything can be set up and configured. So here you can see a huge number of tables, as you can see. We looked at them partly a few moments ago. Okay, so in a nutshell, what it's trying to show is that there is a company and they're placing offers. Okay, so each offer has a maximum bid price, an activation zone, as you can see over here. If we click on these, it kind of highlights these for us. As subscribers move around, which what they will tend to do, okay, as they're walking around, they'll be continuously matched to these offers. If there are members receiving multiple offers, the one with the highest price will be selected, for example. And then additionally, as part of this in terms of segmentation and so on, okay? So this is fairly substantial, okay? And so this can be set up fairly easily. If you don't want to use an S3 bucket in terms of the data ingest, switching to Kafka is very straightforward because the pipeline, the way that it's set up is extremely similar to what I showed you for the Kafka example there. All right,
this is great, Akmal. I just wanted to check in and let you know that we have 13 minutes left whenever you are.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Of course.
So let me try and finish off here then. Okay, so I think the key things here then, this aspect, the ingest, the analyze, the serve, very straightforward to do. The ingest is super simple to do. We can run analytics directly within single store because of this column store capabilities, but typically what you probably want to do is to connect some kind of third-party tool, perhaps, where you might want to render some nice visualization. Sorry about the Metabase there, my bad there, but I'll look into that. And batch and real time. Okay, today we looked principally at real time, and it was fairly structured data. Okay, we didn't consider unstructured data. Everything running in the cloud, with the exception of the data generation, which I had for the first example. And the other thing is that with this kind of thing, in terms of geo-targeting, we have the geospatial support, which makes this dead simple. So the ability to, store these polygons. You saw the case in Manhattan, for example, these rectangular areas, or points as we had in the first example with our sensors located globally. And again, storing information about the different continents. We can do things like overlap, for example, contains all of these sort of geospatial operations. Very useful, again, for this type of scenario. Okay, so almost there, almost finished. Okay, one of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier on is that if you're working with Kafka, it is very helpful if you have a kind of a good mapping between these brokers and the way that single source actually stores its data. Okay, so here you can see this kind of parallelization. This is going to work really well because there is an exact match between the sort of partitions that we have and how the data are divided across the single store cluster as well. So the leaves are where the data actually reside. So this will give you the maximum throughput. Although in the example that you saw me using, I mean, it still works. Okay, the pipeline will still work, but it will be far more effective if you have a sort of an environment where this kind of exact matching occurs. Some of the example customers, so Factors.ai, Fathom, Haylink, okay, so marketing analytics, website analytics, content monetization platform. We have references and white papers and customer case studies on these. So if you're a little bit more interested in terms of how real customers are actually using some of these capabilities. Reduction in terms of total cost of ownership, huge performance benefits, and again, consolidation, okay, because instead of using multiple database systems, just being able to use one product that has these wide range of capabilities. All right, thank you, great. Quickly then, just a couple of things here. So singlestore.com/cloud-trial, okay, if you want to sign up. If you prefer the free production use, I think you can do that as well, but I'd highly recommend go for the cloud trial first. that will give you a great way to just get started with practically, like I said, no credit card required. Sign up. And just for today, bit.ly/Kafka_meeting. This very handsome gentleman here will assist you. And if you have your own data, for example, you want to try it out, want to test out some pipelines, want to be able to configure and read in these streams from Kafka, Aditya here will assist you in that. Okay, Q&A. There we go. So,
great. Thank you, Akmal. We will now begin the Q&A session. So just 2 quick reminders for the audience. Number 1, everyone will get a copy of this webinar recording plus links to the resources that Akmal used during his demo. So rest assured, you'll get that via email. Number 2, reminder that if you have a question for Akmal, the Q&A functionality is in the lower right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar console. We do already have quite a few audience questions, so we'll get to as many as we can. Akmal, here's the first one. It is from Colin.
Yes.
In our environment, we are pipelining market data, which is several billion records a day, which are pipelines wired up to Amazon S3 as the data source. Okay. Is there any particular guidance that you would recommend as to how to best stream that data in the Kafka bus, or is this not so much of a concern?
Oh, great question. I think my recommendation is you need to talk to this Aditya, the gentleman that let me show you his picture. So let's get this guy to talk to you, Colin. He will help you, okay? So he works with customers in the field day in, day out, and has a breadth and depth of technical knowledge. But I think that doesn't, I mean, yes, the volume of data sounds large, but in this grand scheme of things, the volumes that we tend to deal with today, I think that's perfectly manageable. I don't see that as a big problem. But obviously in terms of architecture and ingest, I think there are some important considerations. Like I mentioned, maybe having a good mapping in terms of the brokers, the partitioning of the data on the Kafka side, against the cluster size that you have on single store to get the maximum benefits and the throughput. I think those will be important things to think about. But again, from what I understand, and I mentioned the customer in Europe that's building this kind of integration hub. They are a major financial institution that is dealing with vast quantities of data, and they're absolutely not seeing any slowdown at all. Okay, so basically reach out to us, okay? We'll talk to you and see how we can help you.
Awesome. Let's get to the next question. This is from Hasim. Does this come with any driver to connect using some programming language?
Okay, so if you're working with, say, Java, SingleStore has a JDBC driver. You could use MySQL or MariaDB drivers as well if you want, but the S2 driver, as it's called, is optimized for SingleStore, okay? And that's, I think, would be a great one. There is Python support as well, other languages too, ODBC, for example. Basically anything with JDBC, ODBC support. If it's MySQL wire compatible, very, very simple to use. So I think we have, if I just do a quick search here, SingleStore JDBC driver. There we go. Okay, so the docs are the best place to go. Okay, so this is, let me just accept all here. So other languages are supported as well, no problem. Okay, so this is, as I said before, very easy to set up. And if you're going to build with Maven or any of those things, no problem there. Node.js, Laravel. Okay, so the wide range of languages that are supported are all listed here in the documentation. Everything down to Ruby and Rust as well. Okay, .NET and so on.
Great. Okay, here is a question from Arthur. Is there scaling, or what are the strategies to avoid building back pressure in Kafka topics?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that's kind of beyond my knowledge, Arthur. Let's get back to you on that one, okay? So again, please reach out to us But you saw me in one example, there was no throttling at all. In the second example, the ad tech one, I did limit it and try to control how much throughput there was. So there is something that we can do on the single source side, certainly in terms of managing the volume that's coming in. We don't want to overwhelm. I mean, it's like if you've got huge reservoir of data and a tiny pipe in terms of which you're trying to get it through, is obviously going to, there's going to be a blockage. So there are, I think, a couple of ways that we could do it. So just throttling, perhaps looking at increasing the size of the cluster and the parallelism in terms of the pipelining. That would be a great way to do it as well. But I think there's again, other strategies that perhaps professional services and technical consultants like Aditi could assist with. But again, great question. Thank you for that.
Good stuff. So here's another question. What are the possible sources of data generally?
Anything and everything. I think someone wrote an article a few years ago and basically said that most of the data in the world is not in databases, right? It's in things like spreadsheets, pieces of paper, right? Sticky notes. These are the things that tend to have most of the data. But if we're talking about electronic data, then of course, as far as single store is concerned, I mean, the various connectors. So just to give you an example, so when I was working on ingesting this sensor data, for example, I was using DeepNote here. And so DeepNote is a great environment, and it just so happens that I use Spark. So I created a Spark environment here, and loaded the data into a Spark data frame. I could have done some more analytics or a bit of work massaging the data, and then I did a couple of plots here, and then I wrote the data to single store. So essentially, I mean, there's many different ways that you could get the data into single store, whether it's through JDBC, whether it's through a client program. You saw me running a Java program to generate those CSV data for the first example. That's sending that up to the Confluent Cloud. I could work with JSON, Avro, Parquet. There's a variety of formats that I could work with. Essentially, we are very fortunate today in that there are many ways that we could deal with different types of data. We can format and convert it to other types. And so I think dealing with data is less of a problem. I think much more it's a case of the strength, the accuracy of the data. You saw in that example, the second example, where we had a problem that the data were being generated, but there was an issue. But we can, a simple fix can get around that. But really what we would go back and investigate, why is the data being generated inaccurately? I mean, where is the problem? It obviously the bit of code that generated that caused the issue, but we were able to deal with that. And I think sometimes in life that's what tends to happen. Okay, with Kafka especially, we can use things like registry, and schema. Those would help considerably. But the real world being what it is, it's stranger than fiction sometimes. So, but anyway, any multiple forms of data can be easily you can work with, no problems there at all. Just a question of how you want to deal with it.
Awesome, thank you, Akmal. If you wouldn't mind just jumping back to that final slide, so folks know how to get in touch with Aditya. And Jason, I'll turn it over to you to wrap things up in the last minute.
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Akmal. Yeah, guys, a lot of really good stuff here today, so be sure to reach out to Aditya and follow up with these guys if you have any more questions. There was one question about, will attendees receive this information? I think, Matt, you already answered it, but yes, all the attendees all the registrants and attendees will receive the slide deck as well as all the resources that Akmal used today. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, I just want to remind you one more time, we do have a lot of other great events on our website, dzone.com/events. Be sure to check it out. We've got a lot of great things coming up later this year. This year's just getting started, and we've got a lot to cover, so be sure to check it out there. Thank you so much again, Akmal and Matt, for this webinar today. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Matt. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.